What's happening, dude?
All right, not much. Not much, man. I feel like we're flying into Friday here. Just trying to get as much done as I can get done here before the end of the week, and excited to hop on here and kind of decompress and download
Oh
everything
my
that's been
God.
going on.
Feel the same way, man. Is your well, I don't even consider this a meeting, but do you have any more meetings left in the day before the weekend?
Um, I do have another meeting actually. I got one more at 4 o'clock, and then we're going over. Sadie has dance rehearsal for her big recital tomorrow, so we have to go there right about 4:40. So it's been a packed Friday, but in a good way.
Oh boy. Good luck to Sadie. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's fun to be a part of kind of organized activities and see the growth and development there, socialization, all that fun stuff.
Nice, man. Well, look, yeah, if you've got a meeting at 4, let's jump right into it. Um, Welcome everybody to another episode of the Growth Ethic Podcast. Shane and myself, we do these for personal, professional updates. We have some sessions where we do some teaching, whether it's on GEO or AI enablement, engineering, and everything else in between. We've got hot takes at times too, and it's really an opportunity for us to connect as two friends, humans, entrepreneurs, and along that journey, our hope is that people find some things that are valuable. Um, and we truly value these times. I'm going to throw my hand up for the last couple of weeks. I wasn't able to set aside some time to record for various reasons, but so glad that we're able to spend today to talk about things and maybe do some catch up on just life and business. But how you feeling, man? It's Friday. What's going
Oh,
on?
thanks. Yeah, and I mean it's all good, right? We're coming off of I'll say that coming off of the US holiday weekend and kind of a short week, it's made the last 2 weeks feel like just accelerated, cramming a lot of stuff in. And as you are well aware, when you're kind of at this smaller business side of things and in that entrepreneurial role, it's long weekends and things like that. You make take time off, but it's not like when you have a W-2 and you get that paid vacation and those holidays. Things kind of never stop 24/7, and that's actually something that we could probably touch on today is this notion about work-life balance versus work-life integration. Kind of a fun topic.
Ooh, okay. Okay, I'm down for that. What's funny is that I was sort of thinking about this morning too, how Memorial Day weekend, my friends and I went away, and just by muscle memory, I was packing my bags, my laptop, the what if, right? Got my chargers and everything. Like I could set up shop wherever I am. Um, Luckily, it was a pretty quiet weekend on the side of work where I guess going back to your phrase, which I'm kind of liking, um, work and life is always integrated. But for man, I can't even remember the last time where it really felt like work was not integrated into my life. And I was just so grateful for that type of kind of getaway. I know it doesn't come very often, nor can you even plan for it. There's some weekends where I plan for no work and work, creeps in. Um, but yeah, let me hear your thoughts on it. I mean, I like that phrase though, work-life integration. Where's your mind at with this topic?
Yeah, so I it's not that's not a Shane original. That's a
Hmm.
reproduction from my business coach and the program that I'm a part of, Dan Martell. He talks about that, and really from his perspective, kind of like a disciplined, systematic approach to your managing your calendar, managing your schedule. And I certainly live in this area of getting you feel like, at least at times I do feel like Stretch Armstrong, and uh you feel like you got things in the calendar but you get pulled away, and then sometimes there's these open blocks in your calendar and you're not necessarily working as efficiently as you can. But time and time again, have come back to this where it's like there's ultimately not really a way to keep anything in balance. I mean, in from a physics standpoint, from a life standpoint, all of that, it's like things are always imbalanced. And I think what you're trying to do is you're always working towards trying to keep everything in balance. But I would say that you're kind of chasing a unicorn if you think that there's some mystical work-life balance piece that comes, right? Because everybody has different thought process and vision for what that actually would mean. And so I really picked up on and like this concept of work life integration because, from a purely systematic calendar perspective, it's a lot about making sure you have your time blocks set
Yeah.
for each day, each week, looking out throughout the year. And that way you're able to, again, kind of integrate things together. So that's a bit more of like a visual depiction. And then I would say just on the more psychological human side of that, it's really about your mind. I think especially for those out there that are entrepreneurs or business oriented, your mind is always thinking about ideas and the business and all the different things, and constantly trying to bring that back and feed it in. And so having those clear boundaries of when it's a good time to turn that off and work, invest in the family, invest in your personal development, invest in fitness, those main areas. And ultimately that's what I would say, kind of, if you're looking for balance, is really about how do you successfully integrate it over time, integrate and intertwine those two, um, without, and ultimately you don't want to burn yourself out on in one area or another. And that's kind of the goal and what we're striving for.
It goes back to, I think I forgot which episode, where I had like an enlightenment where, I always talk about my four F's.
Hmm.
And if you look at it as like four quadrants, there are times where one quadrant pulls you so much more than the other three, or two pulls you more than the other two, what have you. But that self awareness of where your time, your money, your mental capacity is really invested towards, having that self awareness goes such a long way. Um, Even yesterday, I caught myself thinking like, all right, I'll get all my work done by 6, have dinner, and then if I power through till midnight, I might have a decent weekend. And yeah, there's some days like that. And quite honestly, the last, I'd say, month, it's been a bit of a grind. Like there have been like 3 days every single week where, I'm working to a pretty late time in the night. And look, some days are easier than others. But I caught myself like time negotiating with myself yesterday. And I said, there are just some times where like I needed, like I realized yesterday that I was pulling myself to one quadrant way too much. Um, and I turned to my wife and I was like, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a really long walk and just get away from things. Um, it's funny that we just came back from a really nice, like long getaway, and like 3 days felt like 3 months already. And I had that feeling of like, let's just go for a long walk. And what I found, what I found out about myself is that I used to have a really hard time separating work and life. So even if I had gone for a walk, I'd be thinking about work on that walk. But I think, and I'm not saying you have to be an entrepreneur. And in fact, I would even emphasize that if you are a W-2 worker, that you'd have, I think you should get even better at this. You have to get better at this. And it's the skill of really leaving work behind if you are going to go for a walk, right? Just to really separate work and life, just for a little bit, if it's 10 minutes or 2 hours, well, whatever the activity that you're doing, trying your best to really separate work and life, maybe talking about something entirely different, and not just like, how is your day type of thing, but talk about, you know, things that are so wild, like dreams, or talk about your childhood, some things that'll force you to think about things that you don't normally think about. And it was such a lovely walk, and came back, even just, a walk away just around the town, sort of re-energized us, re-energized me. And yeah, I think it happens so often. This you find yourself, going way too deep into one area of your life, whether business or personal. Um, but I think I'm so glad that I think I'm getting better at separating the two when I do need to separate it. I think most of the times it is like you said, it is so integrated, and you have to be really smart about time blocking. But man, it's a daily thing. I feel like I'm always thinking about what's next, right? Like I need to get good sleep for that.
Hmm.
I need to do this so that I have time for the next thing. And it gets sort of exhausting sometimes. I won't sugarcoat it. Um, but yeah, it's those softer, intangible skills that allow you to do the more physical demanding things or mentally demanding things, which is all of the other stuff within the business.
Yeah, 100%. I find that working through, um, at least using our calendar and coordinating schedules is a huge step and a help for us in that, because it becomes just a universal communication mechanism about, and also a visual one of, where you're able to see not only where your time and energy are going, which is a kind of a fun exercise for people to go through their schedule for the last couple 2-3 weeks, and then look at where did you actually spend your time, and then to write down every 15 minutes for the next 2 weeks going forward, what are you spending your time on, and start to get that feeling of, okay, this is what this distribution looks like. And like you said, and then becoming more metacognitive about the state that you're in, and removing yourself from almost your own thoughts, and saying like, okay, yeah, this is what's going on, and I'm actually feeling these feelings. I need to kind of change what I'm working on or what I'm doing. Like you said, go on a walk, do some exercise, or vice versa. If you're feeling like in the zone, it's like, all right, I gotta double down right now. I'm just in the zone, and I'm feeling it, and I'm energized. Like, let's go do that. And I would say that's something that I'm continuously working on, trying to improve and dial in. It's like getting the calendar, getting also the feelings of what I'm working on at different times, to pattern that, so that way we can kind of optimize it, and like you said, have that the integration be as evenly split as possible. But again, over time, it's not linear, and it's not at 25% in each four quadrants every single time. It's certainly circumtuitous, and there's ups, there's downs, there's all kinds of things. But in the long run, I would say trying to stabilize that and putting some boundaries around it will help you like hit that peak efficiency and peak focus.
Yeah. Dude, let's get real with ourselves. Let's own up to one thing that we have control over, and maybe you have been doing a good job. But I want to get something off my chest and maybe put it out there so that I can be more accountable for myself. But what is that one thing that is relatively controllable that we just haven't done a good enough job at, that might trickle down into the inability to give the most or the best version of yourself to all areas, right? Whether it's personal or professional. For me, if I do a bit of a retrospect, I think for me it's been sleep. And all the parents are out there are probably just shaking their head at me because I have all the opportunity to have a very consistent and very just abundant sleep cycle. But it's relative. I think everyone, struggles with their own things. But for me, yeah, I think if there's one thing that I absolutely can control, but I just haven't been controlling nearly enough, it's been sleep. And what that really means is that I've been losing the most precious times of my day, which is, that time between 6 to 9 a.m., where a lot of the best things that have driven personal and professional growth arguably happened. So yeah, I'm almost kind of in a confessional way, just putting that out there because I know I need to work on it. Maybe if I just speak it into existence and also pray more about it and put some more effort into it, it can turn into a strength. But it's certainly been the thing that um, it has been sort of handicapping my days more so than not. I'd say in the last few months.
Yeah, I can totally understand that one. And whether you have children or not, whatever your circumstances are, I think everybody goes through those cycles, especially, sleep is a very almost polarizing thing because I can think of so many different contexts of how people think about waking up in the morning, how certain people behave and act if they are more active in the nighttime, and all this stuff, and then having shorter sleep periods and almost wearing it like a badge of honor. But I would say the thing that I have found most helpful related to consistent sleep and almost like human performance optimization is setting, instead of setting a wake up alarm, which, still probably going to need one, but more important than the wake up alarm is actually the go to bed, go to sleep
Mm,
alarm, and setting a distinct time that becomes a habit where, of course, nothing's 100%, but if you can get that 90 or even 80% plus of the time where you kind of have a wind down routine and then a lights out, that has been the biggest single shift for, I think, for me, and even some degree for Mary. My best days are, yeah, when I have my mornings, and really the morning and all of the stuff that comes in that first half of the next day is set up by a successful evening.
yeah.
And recognizing, I think for us it's making sure that little no screen time off the phone, also really like reading a few pages of an actual physical book or a Kindle right before I fall asleep. But yeah, that lights out time is the focal point, and I have tried to work around that and try to, flex the time into the evenings to work a little bit, and then it impacts the next morning. And, I was actually in a similar cycle the last couple weeks, and then just kind of put the foot down. I was like, nope, you know what, this doesn't feel good. And so, there's always a little bit of a transition period, but have now gone back to a bit earlier morning regimen with gym in the morning, and coming back after that and have had my best days because of that. And then, working into setting that go to sleep, that bedtime schedule.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like, I feel like the days where I do sleep the best are the ones where I go for a run.
Hmm.
And I've been reintroducing just a couple miles, nothing, extensive. And even the walk yesterday, um, yes, such a better, like the quality of sleep was so much better um, compared to when I'm just doing, a low intensity or high intensity workout. So maybe that's something for me to reincorporate a little bit more consistently. But man, sleep, love it and hate it at the same time, if that makes any sense. I hate the things that I might be missing out on because I'm sleeping, but I know I'm gonna be feeling real nice if I get that good sleep.
Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
man.
and one of the other groups that I'm a part of, it's actually really a neat story. The business is called The Uncommon Business, and actually we had the founder, Callan Faulkner, on the podcast, our
Good.
first ever guest, and filling in for Sam last fall, or early winter time. I think you were traveling at that point, but their business is such a cool story because they're, I don't know, 2.5, 3.5 years into this, and they've gone from, six figures, like mid six figures, to last year 4 million in revenue, to this year on track to do something like 35 to 40 million.
Wow.
And I've been a part of their group, and I've learned a lot of my AI education from them and AI skill set from them. But watching them, their team, and how they perform and the growth, and one of the things that she talks about a lot is, there's all these professional athletes out there making seven figures plus, and the things that they do to be at the highest performance in their particular sport and expertise. Unfortunately, the entrepreneurial world has not really followed suit, but she has made that actually a priority. And so, not only for her personally, but the entire team, that's a focal point, is treating themselves like professional athletes, in the sense of how they set their routines, sleep, how important that is, nutrition, peptide regimens, like IV is working out, food down to the nth degree of food. So there's a lot to be said about investing in yourself at the highest level if you really want to be the highest performer in your particular area. And that could be, whether it doesn't matter if you're in a W2 job, if you're entrepreneur, got your own business, whatever the case is. If you really want to be next level, you have to go do next level things, and that starts with how you treat yourself, both your mind and your body. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it's a recipe for the start to success for sure.
Yeah. Definitely goes a long way. Um, it's a very slippery slope too when you lose touch of what's been working. Um, you can have these like lapses in judgment. Um, it was a kind of a tough, like, I think it was Monday evening, back from a long weekend on a long drive. I knew this week was going to be tough. I was picking up my parents. I was just talking to my dad, and I was like, "Wow, like, these are all great problems to have." But I caught myself sort of venting about how much there is, like how much weight there is on my shoulders right now, right? And I started negotiating with myself, thinking maybe I'm maybe where I'm at is just good enough, right? Like maybe if I can just maintain this, find some more efficiencies so my days aren't as long, maybe that is kind of the end game for me. Like I was getting to that point. I'm sure a lot of, maybe you, I'm sure so many entrepreneurs battle with that thought, right? Maybe this is the end of the business, and maybe in a good way. Like I've reached many milestones, and I think this might be the end, and it's on to the next thing. Um, anyway, thankfully, I was venting to the right person, and my dad said, like in Korean, he basically said, "Hey, it seems like the iron is hot." And what do we say? Like, you strike when the iron's hot. It just sounds like you're a little tired right now. Like you need some rest. You need to get back to how you were when things were in a much crappier place, but you were still so energized and bullish in what you were doing. Got to get back to that place, because imagine that person in your place right now. He'd be thinking about way different things. So it's a slippery slope. And sometimes the people around you sort of pick you up, when you're at a place where everything seems to be going against you, even if the problems are so positive. Like, goodness gracious, like now that I even talk about it, and that's what I love about these chats, now that I talk about it, it even sounds silly. But in those moments, it's the least silliest thing. It feels really difficult, and it feels like there's really no way out. And I think what we're getting to here is that it's not how smart you are at times or how much you are good at your own craft or the product or the service that you're pushing and selling. You are the business, especially as a solopreneur, and you got to treat yourself as the most important commodity in that business for everything else to be working.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So much to unpack there. The first thing that came to my mind was almost this notion of staying hungry. And for me, and I think, folks out there, whatever it is that you like for hobbies and sports and things like that. Like if you follow athletics or whatever, if there's somebody that you admire who's kind of like the world's best at something, it's just unbelievable the hunger that they carry. And that is true if you look at like a professional sports athlete, right? When they're coming up and they're young and they're hungry, they're moving through the levels, middle school, high school, college, maybe, and then into the professional realm. And I think you see a lot of people who get through college and they do really well, and then they get into the NFL, kind of the peak of it, and then they fall off. And there's certainly a divergence there of people, and I also think about like LeBron, Kobe, who not only did all that, but then stayed so hungry once they made it there. And they're, I think, just staying hungry to something and understanding that sometimes you might have to take a little step back. And if it's going to feel like a little step back or take a rest or a little reset, but as long as you come back focused and hungry and you're continuing to grow those goals and set a really, really big vision for yourself, um, that hunger will stay there. Especially what I've found is if you're aligned on something that you're passionate about and that you love doing and that you can help others, um, there's tough moments, and I can totally relate with that. But 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, you feel that hunger and that drive, and that's so so important. And it also just interlays really well with, again, how you treat yourself, to get to that next level and push forward, and it's all connected and just kind of moving that ball forward. But yeah, it's fun to be in a position where you're somebody out there. Can't remember who it is, but they always say like blissfully dissatisfied. So happy and content, present in the moment, but also still hungry.
Yeah.
And that's what I always like to try and feel as much as I can. And I definitely do experience that a lot of the time. But there are definitely those moments where you're like, man, just get to this cruising altitude and then kind of put in autopilot and cruise. It's certainly an attractive route. Um, and I think the second point that came to my mind is that a lot of times as businesses are growing, uh, I kind of feel so far it's like you hit this escape velocity, and then you get to a point where you're almost in this like a rocket where it gets out of orbit and it's in outer space, and then the amount of energy required to move around is so much lower. And as far as a business goes, I feel the same thing of like right now, it's like I'm just using so much fuel to just get out of orbit, out of the gravitational force. And once you do that and the business gets this amount of momentum, you actually can like do more for the business by just stepping away more, delegating more. And the most successful founders that I know who have really scaled, they actually talk a lot about working less in the business. You might work more on it, but actually less. And the founders' most valuable time is being away from it, being out of the day to day, being out of the meetings, being out of the tactical hand to hand stuff, and really like just going out, digital detox, walking, thinking about vision, talking to people. They spend almost all their time in that. And then the small percentage is just actual tactical operational stuff. But I think that there becomes a point where you can actually work less in the business and the business will grow more. And I
Yeah.
know we're both on a trajectory to get there. And a little number is that, again, business coach Dan Martell, this came up on one of our calls, and he's like, look, it the business gets is a lot more. He called it fun, and he's like a lot more fun, like approximately $5 million a year annual recurring revenue top line. It's like that's the point where it's gonna like kind of feel this shift, and I've observed that so many times now with different entrepreneurs that I know. where it is a grind to that point of something like 3 to 5 million. But then if you can take it to that point and then you still are hungry, then growing it out from that point becomes a lot easier in a sense,
Mm,
because you can really have that time and space. In my view, it's like the business has so much inertia, and um, it's got a flywheel effect, and so you can then kind of direct that where you want to go instead of having to be constantly spinning the wheel to keep it going.
right. And I would even argue at that point in your entrepreneurial journey, all of the things that we talk about, right? The sleep, how you fuel yourself becomes even more important because though the this number of decisions you make in a day might decrease, the gravity of each decision now becomes even bigger. And the impact of that one decision needs to be well thought out before you make that decision. It harkens back to that very famous interview that Jeff Bezos had around like what does a day in your life look like? I forget who asked him or what interview it was, but it's like soundbited on Instagram like every other minute now. Um, but he says like if we were to sleep 6 hours instead of 8 hours, if those 2 hours now gives him another 2 hours to make more decisions, what are the quality of decisions he's making in those 2 hours? Certainly not the type of quality of decisions that you want to lead a massive enterprise like Amazon. And for him, it almost sounds like those elements of what happens before and after your time of being, performing at your craft becomes even more important, and it maybe has to be elevated to a different degree to handle, the potential consequences and the results of the more, yeah, albeit decreased, but really heightened sense of decision making that you need to perform. But yeah, I could totally see that as well. I mean, I think we're living it. Like I can feel it. Like every day feels like there's a million and a half things to do. Um, but it's not without an end in sight. I think you and I can see what life looks like once we get through all the things that are requisite to make a business sort of run on its own. And I think part of what drives us is that vision alongside with a lot of other important elements of like why we do things, who we do it for, what kind of impact do we want to make in other people's lives, things of that nature. But this isn't, you know, a business for the sake of running a business. It's a business with some sort of different vision and sight for how it's supposed to be run at the end of the day.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I think it's also when you look at starting a business or going out on your own, I think it's very easy to get caught up and see other people who are successful and be like, yeah, that'll be easy. And for some, that might be the case, but I think for most, that's not the case that make it through. And I just think back to it's similar to any professional athletes, right? I just, for whatever reason today, I keep thinking about LeBron, and it's like the amount of reps and the work that it takes, most people are not willing to do that. And that's why both professional athletes, successful entrepreneurs, it's such a small percentage of the population. And you could, for LeBron, it's like, well, you could think like you'll just go out, walk on the court, and it would be easy. Even if you're really talented, you got the right size, all that, but it's not. There's so many reps, right? Times in the gym, hours spent practicing, all of this investment, and then you get to a point where you hit this like mastery, and then you can even take it even further to become the best of the best. And all of that, though, a lot of people don't see the hard work, the investment to get to that point. And I think the same thing is true in entrepreneurship. You can really, it can seem really fun and sexy and like, oh man, I'll just do this. But at the end of the day, it's the same with anything else. If you want to be in the top, fraction of a percent of people and have all of this responsibility, you've got to be driven, and there has to be another motivation behind it. for sure, to keep you going on those days, because certainly just financial stuff is not gonna get you there.
Yeah.
But
Now
yeah,
all those like cheesy sayings that entrepreneurs had, like failure's never an option, and the list kind of goes on. I know why it's there because it's so applicable, man. Like it's just a perfect representation of what you need at certain moments, but a more lighthearted juxtaposition. Look, we talked about like you mentioned a lot of like athletes and the preparation and all the things that they do to be ready for game day, and for decades just to get to that point. A more lighthearted juxtaposition here is for my Knicks fans. Look, we've been suffering for 27 years, right? Since 99, for me at least, 27 years. But every single game for the last 27 years, what do? We turn the TV on, we watch the game in hopes of a bigger vision for the team, right? Of course, it's out of our control, but there's just more, a fun-hearted way of understanding what it means to put in the time in something that you believe in, and hopefully, when it comes to a business, you are in control of many more things than rooting for one of your favorite teams. But there will come a time, and multiple times throughout a day or a year or over the course of 5 to 10 years, where you feel so vindicated. The same way all the Knicks fans right now are feeling vindicated for decades of heartbreak, but decades where heartbreak didn't deter you from continuing to be a fan and believing in a larger vision. That's sort of the mentality I think that, well, first off, I need to reclaim, but also realize, like I said, failure is not an option. Like it's not. It's never really a failure. It's just bumps in the road and all the cliches out there. It's starting to make so much more sense as, I ride this real big roller coaster of ebb and flows, um, as an entrepreneur, and happy to do it alongside you and so many others. But look, I know you got a meeting in a few minutes here. Would love to hear just a quick update on how things are going on the Obnovit side of things. I can share a quick update on my end, and it'll be a short and sweet one,
that
to
sounds
come
good.
back with one of our latest episodes here.
Yeah. So, quick update, I would say we're in the middle of delivering. We're just past halfway in our 8-week AI training program. It's going really well. Kind of revamped the curriculum, which you almost have to do somewhat in real time because there's announcements that come out weekly now at this point that change everything. We're seeing a lot of success and a lot of growth inside the Microsoft Copilot realm, which got a bit of a bad rap, right? Rightly so over the last number of months. But I think Microsoft has finally figured this out and set a vision, and seeing a lot of really great use cases and traction with Copilot, and then being able to build out even more advanced solutions with the students, both inside of Copilot and inside of some of the other upper tiers in the Microsoft realm. So that's been really exciting, kind of the biggest news flash for a lot of people out there. And then outside of that, I think, the focus is really on marketing, and we should we should probably do an episode or two just on marketing and your expertise in your area. But like the true, as I do this more and more, it's like the true lifeblood of any business, small, medium, enterprise is a little bit different on the momentum cycle. But I would say, small, medium to smaller enterprise level, it's like the lifeblood, and the thing that every single business needs is more leads.
Yep.
And so once we control leads, we control our own destiny. And so that's what we're essentially setting out to master, is
Yeah.
crack the code on leads and lead gen. So that way we can throttle that up, throttle that down, put people on wait lists. We can, do all kinds of things. But once you have the attention and the attraction, that's the big focus. So
Yeah.
over the next 3 months, 90 days, that's kind of our big rock, is to crack that code and figure out the mechanism in which we can consistently, week by week, have lead flow resulting in deal reg or deal gen and sales.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I would love to talk more about that. And it's not a one size fits all thing, right? It's not a one size fits all practice. Depends on the business, the people behind the business, obviously the service and the product as well. Um, But yeah, I totally agree. It is the lifeblood of all businesses, really. Barring that the service and the product is good, you can't market something that is trash. Not saying that either of us, we're pushing anything wrong here. Um, but I do. The reason why I say that is there's a lot of businesses that I've talked to saying, and they think that marketing will be a silver bullet for them, but
Hmm.
there's issues with the product, and they know that there are issues because people are talking about it in the form of reviews or in forums. And it's just shocking to me that they think, we can market something that's already broken and it just doesn't fit the ideal
Hmm.
customer profile. So it goes hand in hand. It's not just one
Yeah.
function, it's an entire kind of movement and dance that has to work across sales, customer support, product development, all the way to the C suite level, too, because there's now more than ever, there requires a brand and a face of the brand and a
Hmm.
voice or voices that are synonymous with the brand. But yeah, I think that would be an interesting topic for another episode. And yeah, before we drop off, my quick update. Um, I had wanted to focus on marketing, but man, and I'm not going to be reliant on this, but the word of mouth referrals just keep coming through. And look, if they're
Nice.
going to keep coming through, definitely going to honor them, of course. I'm obviously not going to say, hold up, let me get my marketing plan together before I service you guys. So it's been a lot on the execution side, sales and
Hmm.
well, not marketing, but rather sales, closing deals, and at an inflection point now where I think I need to grow the team even further. So that's just the area of my business that's pulling me. Unfortunately, that means it's pulling time away from the marketing side of things that I was really excited about, because that's such a big unlock for a business to start becoming a little more sustainable, as you said. But we'll get to it. We'll get to it, or I'll find some extra time to get to it on the side. But that's where I'm at right now. It's a good problem to have. So grateful. I think it was a pretty authentic, kind of real, emotionally intelligent conversation today. But it doesn't mean that we're sad or upset about our situation. Sometimes things are just difficult. We're just gonna keep it real. It is
Hmm.
freaking hard at times, and we need to find ways to pick
Yes.
ourselves up, pick each other up, and that's what community and these types of conversations are for. My little last tip actually just came to my mind. I've just been going back to like what I was doing a lot in the beginning of my journey, which was having virtual coffees with a lot of people
Hmm.
that are even like outside of my industry. Maybe I worked with them in my past life. I've been doing that a little bit more just to get out of the same routine day to
Yeah.
day of what I'm used to. So maybe a quick tip for anyone out there, maybe anyone out
Yeah.
there that might be feeling something similar, that's just in a rut type feeling. Go out of your way. Say hi to someone that you haven't talked to in a long time. Buy them a coffee and talk to them for 10, 15 minutes.
Nice. Yeah, I like that one a lot. And also, just to wrap things up here for this episode, don't forget we're spinning on a rock out in the middle of outer space, and that life is short. So focus on the day, enjoy life. You never know
Amen.
when it could get taken away. So you gotta enjoy every moment of it, and don't get too caught up in yourself.
Amen. I'm gonna go out right after this, enjoy my day, shoot some hoops, enjoy the weather. That's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Sam. Thanks everybody out there.
Appreciate it, guys. Talk soon.